I'm Cordovez. Adam Schoenfeld. Welcome to The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. Adam, welcome back
Thank
from
you.
your extensive travels.
I was on some operations in Southeast Asia.
You were missed by your many fans.
You know, I watched the shows while I was gone, and they were terrible.
Thank God that brought you back, though.
I had to come back, and also the fan acclamation has been tremendous.
Now, when we were growing up in different parts of Alabama,
I was in Huntsville.
I was growing up in Mobile.
That's right.
We always heard about Hoyt Corkins, this very good poker player who won a bracelet back in the 90s, and then kind of left the circuit for a decade, more than a decade, and then came right back and won a WPT and another bracelet. So very interestingly, he's a real old school guy and a new school guy, and he hit the ground running, moving all in on people and shaking people up and shaking Phil Hellmuth up.
This guy plays power poker, and people do not like that.
This is not the new small ball. This is the
This
pressure.
is the old Doyle power poker.
Old pressure style. And unfortunately, he's always so been in the news because he came back to his house here in Las Vegas and had been cleaned out. So we're going to talk to him about mostly poker, but also these recent developments. So unfortunately, you've been in the news because your house was robbed, and a lot of people in the poker community are curious, and we're going to talk about that. But as far as poker goes, people who've seen you on TV see you saddled with the name Mr. Move-In, and the first time you really came to prominence in this era was at the WPT against Phil Hellmuth, where you were moving in on him. You think that's a fair characterization, or are they just taking one part of your game and building it up?
Well, I think it's fair to a point, and to a point they are taking one part of my game. You know, it's a lot of final table strategy, or, you know, maybe 27 free tables down to the finals. That the all-in moves is a lot more effective than it would be on day 2 or day
Right.
3.
So you're not playing that way from the beginning, in other words?
No, of course not.
If he was, I don't think we'd have seen him.
That's what I always get a kick out of, especially in WPT and also on ESPN, which is that they pick the dramatic hands where people are all in.
Right.
But that's only part of what's going on, and there isn't a lot of context as to what's led up to it. Although it did seem, at least in that match against Phil, that you were moving in on them a lot. But then again, maybe that's because that's an effective strategy against him in particular.
Well, I think the one that I was moving on field so much was the WPT Foxwood Season 2, and we had a day off for the taping of the show, and I looked at the blind structures, and once the blinds got to a certain point, then I thought that would have been the right way to play that.
Mm-hmm.
And blinds got up to 15,000, 30,000, and that was true 15 and 30,000. They didn't like triple chips or,
Right.
you know, it was dollar for dollar chips. And Bill had less than $1 million at that point, and I had over $2 million. So it was a lot of pressure on Phil.
Just by Phil's reaction, you know, Phil is somewhat calculated in his reactions, and some of them are genuine that he's frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
But when he reacts that way, that tells you to keep doing it because he's trying to get you to stop because that means he doesn't like it.
Right, that is very good. I really like the all-in move against Phil, in particular.
Yeah.
You know, he would be probably the number one guy that you would make that move against of all the poker players out there.
You get the added emotional satisfaction of hearing his nonsense, which is amusing.
Well, thank you.
Well, the crazy thing that we've talked about before is that Phil has publicly stated over and over that he's not going to call with a marginal hand. I mean, he said, well, I'll get you one of these times. I'll wait till I wake up with the aces, but I'm not in there. I'll find a better spot. And sometimes you think, well, maybe he's saying that just to bring, you know, to force someone to move in weekly and he's ready. But he doesn't. He really follows that precept. And people do keep moving in, although he seems to also find something else to compensate for.
Well, you know, that isn't Phil's game. Phil's a great player. He's probably the best player out there that can put people on hands, especially novice players. And that's what No Limit Hold'em tournament is about, being able to put people on hands. And he does that real good.
I saw a thing, and actually I talked about it with Adam, which is just in the last week or so, Daniel Negreanu in his blog wrote about playing small ball. He was down at the Legends, and he made a really black and white statement where he said, you know, no one can, if you know how to play small ball, then
it guarantees success.
Guaranteed success. If you don't know how to play the small ball, then you've got no shot, and you can't defend against it and all this. And I thought, no, I'm a believer in the small ball, and I've always more or less practiced it even before I'd ever heard the term. But the reality is that if your opponent doesn't cooperate with you in the small ball, then there's no more small ball. If you're limping in and they raise you 5 times, you're going to have to start raising them 5 times and building the pot. So, I mean...
well, that is very true with the point that you're making there, and that is the point that I try to make with the all-in plays and stuff like that, is it's more or less geared for the pros. It's geared for Negrano and Helmuth and players that are above the rim on their game, and I prefer to play big ball poker, long ball poker with them, and maybe small ball poker against somebody feel like you can outmaneuver on the turn or something.
I mean, they're trying to get you to play their game, but because of the dynamics of poker, you don't have to play their game if you don't.
Someone who wants to put people to decisions, which you are a master of, and I remember that when I first played with you, I think it was the bike, it might have been right after you came back from your layoff, and I don't think you'd won the World Poker Tour yet. I was like, this guy really likes to put people to decisions. But that takes the small ball guys out of their game, because once you're, as you said, if I'm playing big ball, your small ball's out the window. The pot's big now.
Right, or you just let me have every pot.
Right.
And then the one time you come back, okay.
But I remember guys shaking their heads and not knowing what to do with you. This is probably 6 years ago.
Well, actually, I came back to play poker. This bike would have been my 5th year since I came back. And, so I've been back on the tournament trail 5 years now. It feels good. Tournaments are very exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the travel.
Hoyt, when you first came back, you had 12 years away from tournaments, or 11 years. The world had changed entirely. Is that what got you to come back, or were you shocked when you came back and found what you found?
Well, I came back. I always felt like I could play. Just went through some things in my life, kept me away from the game for a while. I've been a professional all my life since I was 18. And, I was very confident about coming back. I was very confident, and a lot of people didn't know me. And a lot of people don't give you credit. Back then, 5 years ago, if you made a move, and they didn't know you, they didn't give you credit for making a move.
Right.
So it was, I had quite a bit of success right off the bat, first, second, and I think maybe I finished 21st at the bike that year and lost a big pot to TJ. And if I'd won that pot, I would have been the overwhelming chip leader. And I do that. I do take a chance on winning the big pot, even if I have the worst hand.
Right. The key to tournaments.
A lot of pros won't do that.
No, especially now, because a lot of guys do play what they call small ball, and that can be successful. But if you're willing to gamble in the key spot, you'll be out, or you'll be crippled, or you'll win the tournament in many cases.
You've won a bracelet in No Limit Hold'em and Pot Limit Omaha, and then when I've talked to a bunch of guys about the fact that online, a lot of the No Limit games have dried up, and Pot Limit Omaha has really become popular for a lot of the obvious reasons. Now, obviously, in Pot Limit Omaha, you're limited to the pot as far as your raises go, and no hand is a big favorite over another hand pre-flop, especially the type of hands you might be in there with a raise. So what sort of adjustments do you make in Pot Limit Omaha? I mean, it seems like a lot of your tournament tactics from No Limit wouldn't be as effective, but of course you've been successful in Pot Limit Omaha.
Right. Pot Limit Omaha is more of a gambling game. No Limit Hold'em is more of a craftsman's game. It's more of a skill game. Pot Limit Omaha has a lot more luck in it. It's a lot of skill in Pot Limit Omaha, but the element of luck is a lot higher.